Thank you everyone for coming and joining me. I used the Siyum, which is not the Siyum in Gemara, so I'm not doing a hadron, as a trigger and as an excuse to celebrate with you the Hilula, the art sites of Rabbeinu HaKadosh. And I want to tonight it's late, it's really late, so I'm cutting everything down, but because it was for some of us Yushpizim of Moshe, and in a couple of days we're going to finish with the Histalkus of Moshe Rabbeinu. I decided to talk about the death of the tzaddik. The death of the tzaddik. And I'm going to look at two texts as quickly as I can. One is from Medrash Rabbah, which I usually recite to my family every Shmini Atzeres Simchas Torah, the last chapter of V'zos HaBrocha, Medrash Rabbah to V'zos HaBrocha, which is also quoted in Yalkut and Medrash HaGadol. I'm only going to highlight a few things, but I want to connect it to the last day of Rav Nachman's life, which was documented almost to the hour by Rav Nosson and Rav Ephraim. And I want to compare and contrast. So I want you to consider what I'm about to recite to you as a drama with personalities. Who are the personalities in this drama? Well, of course, Moshe is on one end, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is on the other. But there are other actors in this drama. Gavriel, Michael, Zagzael, and Samael. These angels participate in this drama that's occurring. And finally, the most important actor of all, who is the most unexpected arrival on the scene, is the neshama of Moshe Rabbeinu. And it's all about the reluctance and resistance on the surface only. So Rabbi Yochanan tells us that Ese misos ksuvos olav al Moshe. There were 10 expressions written about Moshe's death. Hein haravu yomech olamos, umus bohar, ki anochi meis, ki odati acharei mosi, af ki acharei mosi, lifnei moso, ben 120 shana b'moso, vayomos Moshe eved Hashem, vayihi acharei mos Moshe. 10 expressions about his death. And the Medrash says that wasn't by chance, because there's nothing redundant in the Torah, and therefore those 10 expressions represented 10 levels of uncertainty until the final decree was issued. The Medrash picks up then, there is a whole sichsuch going on based on the fact that it had to require to tell us that there were 10 expressions of Moshe dying, that they weren't simultaneous, they were sequential. Not only were they sequential, there was a dialogue going on in between. So that's the first thing the Medrash introduces us to. Not only that, the Medrash said, Davar zeh, this initial 9 expressions of Misa to Moshe, kal be'einov. It was not something he took seriously. She'oma Yisrael chatu chatos gedolos come upon him, because he knows that in his own experience with the divine, there were many times that there were decrees. V'kiven shebikashti aleim rachamin miyad kibel mimeni. So anytime I ask for the gezerah to be annulled, Hashem listened to me. So why shouldn't he listen to me this time and not fulfill the decree that I should die? Scene 2. Given Shira HaKadosh Baruch Hu shekal hadava be'enov shel Moshe, since the Eibishter saw that this was something kal, this was something light in the eyes of Moshe, that he wasn't actually taking his death sentence seriously. Ve'eno omed b'tfilah, miyad kafetz alav v'nishba mishmo hagadosh shelo yikanes et Yisrael. So then he comes to this final decree, lochein lo toviu es hakol hazeh, ein lochein elo shvua. So now there's a proof text brought that this final statement, lochein, is God swearing. Well, if he's swearing, he can't go back on his own oath. Lochein nishbati lebeit Eli. Kiven shira Moshe, that the word lochein was being used, and lochein is a shvua. So now Moshe is not taking it so lightly. Gozar alav tanis v'og uga ktana v'omad b'socha. So now Moshe ups the ante as well. Rabboni Shalom says, you're taking it lightly, I'm going to swear that you have to die. You're going to swear that I have to die. So Moshe now, he's og uga, he makes it like a circle in the ground. I'm not moving till you. So he's upping the ante by threatening back. Okay. So at that moment, now we come through Moshe's appeals, and there will be 1, 2, 3, 4 different appeals, and the appeals are classic and everybody knows them. He was lovish sak, then isatev sak, then ispaling the efer va'amad betfila b'tachanunim lifnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And now he starts with his davening to the point where the Eretz and Shamayim are trembling before Moshe's power, and va'omru. Now nature questions God and says, Shema higiat sivyoinu shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu l'chadish es oilamo. Nature is trembling that maybe it's time for the whole world to be recreated somehow because of Moshe's tefillah. Yotzah baskol, so the Eibishter has to send out a baskol. The drama keeps the intensity keeps getting more and more. No, you're getting it wrong. This is just Moshe causing everything to tremble. It's not about the Eibishter trying to redo the world. Okay. Next appeal. To refuse me is to make the Torah a fluster. Why? Because you yourself said, Rabboni Shalom, that you yourself said that there are trials and there is suffering, then there is reward and punishment. So to refuse me is to refuse someone who's asking for you to show rachamim, and you're making the Torah into a false document by refusing that. Second appeal. If you won't let me go, at least let me live outside Eretz Yisrael. Okay, you won't let me into Eretz Yisrael. Same voice comes down, you have to die. Third appeal. Make me like a lower creature, kachayos hasoda. Okay, so I won't be Moshe, I won't be human, but at least I'll be still around. Ravloch, that's the answer. The fourth appeal. Make me like an oif b'shamayim. Ravloch. So, on seeing that all his efforts were to no avail, at that point, Moshe Rabbeinu ba'oisa shah, Moshe Rabbeinu Omar Lifnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that Atzur Tomin Polo. So after all those appeals, Moshe Rabbeinu says, I accept the verdict. I accept the verdict. And then, what does he do? Me oso Moshe, and this is the point. This is my point. Bekitzur, nota es hamagila, v'kosav oleho shem hamaforish, v'sefer hashir. At that point, we are told by the Medrash, he writes Sefer Hashir, which, according to the Radal, is Ha'azinu Hashamayim. It is only at that point, it is almost that, for the Midrashic imagination, Ha'azinu Hashamayim then becomes his final will and testament. It's only at that point where he sees that my attempts to bargain, to threaten, to appeal to the Rebbeinu Shalom have fallen on the ears of Rav Loch. I'm not going to listen to you. At that point, he says, Hatzur Tomim Polo, Ki Kol Drochov Mishpat, Eilemuna Vein Ovel, Tzadik V'Yoshehu. Okay, I accept the verdict. And what's the next thing he does? He writes the Sefer Hashir. Adayin lo nile lichtov. He hadn't even finished writing it at shehegia harega shebo yomus Moshe. As he's finishing, it is almost ready to finish already. He's writing the shir. Then comes his moment to depart. And now we come into the next scene, because you would have thought he's going to give up the ghost and he's going to go without a fight. But now the struggle is not about whether he will die, but in the manner of his death. The struggle for the agency, when the Ribono Shel Olam says, Omar Kodesh Baruch Hu leGavriel, Gavriel, say v'hovei nishmoso shel Moshe. And so Gavriel comes, and he sees that Moshe Rabbeinu is shakol keneged shishim ribu. Eich ani yachol liros b'moso. He tells God, I can't do it. So God now goes to the second angel, to Michael. Say v'havi nishmoso shel Moshe. Omar lefana Rebbeinu Shalom ani ha'isi lo rav. V'hu ha'yoli leTalmid. I was his Rebbe. I taught him Aleph Beit. I taught him the secrets of Torah. You want me? Lo yachol ani lirosa b'mo. I can't do that. I wouldn't be able to see it. So he calls the Satan, our old friend Samael, who originally came riding, right, on the serpent to tempt Chava, already in Gan Eden. Oh, let's bring the Samael Horosha. Say v'havi neshosa shel Moshe. Miyad lovash kas. Immediately he dressed up in anger and achzorius and in cruelty, and he was happy to do the Ribono Shel Olam's. Okay, so he's delighted. He dresses in anger and achzorius, but he says to himself, "Hayo misyore." I'm a little bit scared about this fellow. Why? He makes a calculation. Vaday she'ein ha'malochim yecholum litol nishmoso. So, I mean, if the other angels can't grab him, why do I think that I can? There's this self-doubt on his way to grabbing Moshe as he's riding on his horse with Achzorius and Kas. V'terem shehora samel es atzmo leMoshe, and before he even appeared, Moses knows that he's coming. And since he saw him, he feared he couldn't speak to Moshe. He became dumbfounded. Lo motzo pischon peh ledaber Moshe. So Moshe starts the conversation. He starts off with a pasuk from Yeshaya. Ein shalom Omar Hashem l'Rashaim. What do you want? What are you doing here with me? I have nothing to do with you. Ma taseh bekam. What are you doing here? Omar litol nishmoso. I came here to actually take your neshama. Omar lo mi shigerecha. Who sent you? Amalo Misha Bares Kolabrios, the creator of everything. Amalo Einatal Tol Netel Nishmasi, you're not taking my neshama. Amalo Kolboya Nishmasa Musum Liodi, I'm in charge of everyone's transference to the next world. Excuse me, that's my job. So he says, yeah, Amalo Makhochecha, show me your power. Let's see what you can do. So Amalo Ali Ben Amram Shiyot Sasi Me'ibi, and he goes, you're going to take my neshama? You have the power to take. I was born Ben Amram. I was Yotzo Mimei Imi Mahul. I was born already circumcised. V'lo nitzrachti lemolenu. Ubo bayom shenoladati matzosi pischon peh. V'holachti beragle. V'dibarti m'avi v'imi. V'afilu cholov yolo. I didn't even take my mother's milk. Because she used to be shlosha chodoshim isnabesi. And when I was 3 months, I was already be a novi. I was telling them the future. She osid ani lekabel toira mitoch lahaveyesh. And he goes through the whole story about Paro. And I grabbed his crown. And when I was 80 years old, I was Oisos of Mosim in Mitzrayim. And I hoitisi shishim ribo. He's just telling him his whole biography to the son. I split the sea into 12 different paths. Interesting medrash. And I sweetened the bitter waters. I mean, he's just going on about his whole curriculum vitae, right? And I killed the Egyptians. It just goes on and on. Lech Rosha Mikan. Eilecha loy makain. Lech barach milfonai. Ani no say nishmosi loch. What should Sam do after that speech? Miyad chosos Sam beheshiv doblo pnei agavur. So he goes back to the Rebbe Shalom. Omlo kadosh baruch hu l'Sam. Bova have nishmoser shel. I just told you to bring me his neshama. Okay, so he goes back. Miyad shalav charbo mitara. He draws the sword from the sheath. V'amad al Moshe. So he's standing over Moshe, ready to kill him. Miyad kotzav ala Moshe v'notes hamate biyoda. So Moshe can respond to that. He takes the mate shechokok b'sheim ha'mefoyrush. This is the battle of the titans here. Upoga bo b'samal b'chol koicho ad shenos milfona v'rotzacher b'sheim ha'mefoyrush v'notel kered hoite b'bein einov v'iver es einov. So Moshe blinds him. Doesn't know where he's going. He's just Ad kan also Moshe. Okay, so now we've had Gavriel, Michael, and Samael failing to do the work to bring Moshe's neshama. Moshe's ready to go, but there's a problem. There's a resistance that we don't find out till the very last scene. Soif rega yotzos a baskoil. So they didn't do it. Now a baskoil comes for Omra. Higia soif misosecho. It's your time. Now Moshe finds his voice and finally speaks to the Rebbe Shalom directly. It's the high point of the whole play. You remember when you first met me at the snare? You remember when you told me, go in Paro, I'm sending you. You remember that day? So on the basis of our intimacy, I am begging you, Al timsereni biyad malach hamonis. Don't, you and I have a single relationship. You and I talk to each other, upon him. You need a third person to do it? Do you feel somehow that you needed to send a third person? What does that say about you, right? Please, don't give me over to the malach hamonis. Yotzes Sobasko, and here's the nadir of the whole thing. Al tisyore ani ba'atzmei metapel b'cho ubikvu rosva. I myself will take care of you, meaning I will take your neshama, and I will bury you. The ois shah, that satisfied Moshe. So in this whole second scene, the struggle is not that he's willing to give up and say, okay, I'm ready. That he did in the first scene, Tzadok Adin. The whole of the second scene was coming to the point where he had resisted to any other agency. He wanted the Rabbona Shloim in the Midrashic imagination to directly deal with him. But we'll see why in a minute from the passage. But Oisa Shah Ahmad Moshe, so now he stands up. The Kidei Shatzmo Kasrofim v'Yorad HaKadosh Baruch Hu Mishmei HaShamayim Litol Nishmoso Shel Moshe U'Shlosha Malachei HaShoros Imo Michael, Gabriel v'Zagzel Michael Hitzia Mitosa Shel Moshe, Gabriel Peres Beged Butz. Each one has a different thing. So one is getting the beer ready, the other one is putting a butz mirashosov, zagzel miraglosov. Each one is getting ready the tachrifim. Then God says to him, okay, now hashke veinecha ze al gav zeh, close your eyes. So he did it. Hanach yodcha ala chazeh, he did it. Hakev raglecha zeh al gav zeh, he did it. Now everything's ready to go. Not so fast. Just when we think he's ready to take his soul, we've gone into the last scene, scene 3. Now the Abisha says, right, the body's ready, got all his stuff ready, he's got his tachrichin, we got the mikveh men, everyone's ready, right, ready to go, all the malachim, right? Okay, neshama, kumaher, Amalei, biti. You know, you've been there for 120 years. Now it's time to go. See, al tachrei, come on. Stop tarrying. Stop waiting around. And now we have a whole new speech. Now Moshe's neshama is resisting. Amr lefana, Rebbeinu Shalom, you know, I understand that you're the big chief up there and you're in charge of all the ruchos. The kolam nefashos, nefesh hachayim, ha'mesim, besurim yotva. V'yata borasani, and you created me. I'm not going to argue with that. V'yata yitzartani, v'yata nasati begufa shel Moshe, meyo v'esrim shana. Yeah, I acknowledge all that. But let